You never expect life to change in a blink of an eye, especially when everything seems to be in place. But what if you were blindsided by betrayal, your world shattered in a way that you couldn't even begin to fathom? That's what happened to me. Jason, a man whose life went from perfect to catastrophic. But in the end, revenge, redemption, and a second chance turned everything around. This is my story, and it starts on a morning that changed everything. It was an ordinary morning. The sun had just begun to rise, and I was driving to work, feeling the familiar hum of the road beneath me. I was 35, married to my beautiful wife, Susan, with 2 children, Laura and Lucas, who were the light of my life. Our family seemed to have it all: a stable home, love, laughter, and a future that was as bright as the sun shining through the windshield. Life was good. But in a split second, that all changed. I was driving down the highway when I saw it, a speeding car coming straight at me. I tried to swerve, but it was too late. The collision happened so quickly that I didn't even have time to scream. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed, my body covered in bandages and casts. My mind was foggy, but one thing was clear. My life would never be the same again. The doctor told me that I had been in a coma for 2 days. It felt like a dream, but the pain that shot through my body was all too real. When they told me that my lower body was paralyzed, I couldn't comprehend it. How could this be happening to me? I had so much to live for: my kids, my wife, my career. But now I was confined to a wheelchair, unsure if I'd ever walk again. As I tried to process the news, I fell into a deep depression. My wife, Susan, initially visited me, bringing the kids 3 times a week. Those visits were the only bright spots in my otherwise dark existence. But soon, they became less frequent. She told me the kids didn't want to see me as often, and I felt the cold sting of rejection every time she said that. I begged her to bring them more, but it was always the same excuse. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Susan handed me divorce papers. "I can't spend my life with a disabled man," she said. "I'm still young, and I want a normal partner." I was speechless. I had known something was off, but to hear her say those words that cut deeper than anything physical, was unbearable. How could she do this to me? How could she just walk away after everything we'd been through? My heart shattered into a million pieces, and I felt like I was drowning in my own sorrow. I was in a wheelchair, financially struggling, and now I was alone. The next few weeks were a blur. My friends told me that Susan had been seen out with a man, someone who was much older than her. They were holding hands, meeting at cafes, and spending time together. The whispers reached me, and my worst fears were confirmed. Susan was already seeing someone else just a month after our divorce. Was this man in her life before my accident? Had she been cheating on me all along? I confronted her, but she was dismissive. She told me I was a burden and that I had no right to question her. When I asked if she had been cheating, she laughed it off and told me it was none of my business. She didn't even seem to care about the children anymore. She had moved on so quickly, and it made me sick to my stomach. I found out that she had moved in with her new partner, Evan, a wealthy man who had been divorced multiple times. He had no children of his own, and the rumors in the neighborhood were that Susan was just with him for his money. I tried to see my kids, but Susan wouldn't let me. She told me that the kids had already adjusted to Evan and were calling him Daddy. The thought of that made my blood boil, but I had no choice but to back down. I was powerless. For the next several months, I lived with my elderly mother, who supported me both physically and financially. She worked as a florist and had a modest income, but it was enough to help us survive. My pride took a hit, but I had no other options. I started helping her at the flower shop, and over time, I began to see the potential for growth. My mother's business had a lot of untapped potential, and I knew I could help her take it to the next level. Using some of my old contacts, I secured contracts with event management companies, providing flowers for weddings and corporate events. Slowly but surely, the business grew, and I started my own event management company. It took years, but I rebuilt my life. My mother, despite her age, was my rock, and without her support, I don't know where I would be. A year after my accident, I learned that Susan was moving away with the kids and her new boyfriend. I was devastated. I had been trying to stay in touch with my children, but Every time I tried to contact them, Susan would shut me down, threatening me with a restraining order. I couldn't afford a lawyer, so I had to back down. Despite everything, I never gave up on my kids. Over the years, I made several attempts to reach them, but each time I was met with failure. Susan's influence and her wealthy boyfriend's connections made it nearly impossible for me to get any access. But I refused to give up. I knew I couldn't be the father I wanted to be if I didn't at least try. After 12 years of struggle, I finally had the chance to meet my children again. I had worked tirelessly to get my business off the ground, and with the help of a competent lawyer, I filed for joint custody. The court granted me 15 days with my children, and they were scheduled to come to my house. When the day arrived, I was a mix of nervousness and excitement. My kids were now teenagers. Laura was 17 and Lucas was 15. I had no idea what to expect. Would they hate me for abandoning them all these years? Would they even want to see me? When I picked them up from the airport, the initial greetings were awkward. They didn't seem particularly excited, and I could tell there was tension in the air. We made small talk during the ride home, and I tried to break the ice by asking about their lives, but they were distant. I didn't push too hard, but I could tell they weren't sure what to make of me. When we got home, Amy, my second wife, was there to greet us. Amy had been my rock throughout this journey, and she had been incredibly supportive. But when the kids saw her, they seemed surprised, as if they hadn't expected her to be part of my life. I didn't understand why they were so taken aback. Their mother had moved in with her boyfriend within months of our divorce, so why couldn't I remarry? We had lunch together, and Amy presented the vacation plans she had prepared for the family. The kids' reactions were strange, neutral, almost like they didn't care. They went to their room shortly afterward, and I felt the weight of their indifference. Then, Susan called. She accused me of manipulating the kids, claiming I was using them to get back at her. Her accusations left me confused and hurt. After hanging up on her calls, I decided to talk to my children directly. What was bothering them? They hesitated at first, but eventually, they opened up. They were angry with me, not because I had abandoned them, but because that's what their mother had told them all these years. Susan had painted me as the villain, the father who had deserted them. My heart broke when I heard this, but I knew that I had to be patient. I couldn't undo the damage of the past 12 years, but I could be there for them now. It's been 3 months since my children came into my life again, and things are slowly improving. The road to rebuilding our relationship is still long, but I'm grateful for every step. My children are still processing everything, but they're starting to see me for who I am now. Not the man I was before the accident, but the man I've become. I've forgiven Susan for everything. Yes, she betrayed me, and yes, she hurt me in ways that I can never forget. But I'm not carrying that anger with me anymore. My life is too precious for that. I've rebuilt myself from the ground up, with the help of my mother, Amy, and now my children. And in the end, that's all that matters. In the end, life isn't just about the bad things that happen to us. It's about how we rise from the ashes, how we take the pain and turn it into something better. I've been given a second chance, not just to walk again, but to be the father my children deserve and the man I always wanted to be. My journey isn't over yet, but I've learned that redemption is possible, no matter how deep the wounds may go. This is my story, and it's just the beginning.